It's like a young blood. I'm just super excited to bring you this blog because I've given you a little tidbit of the hard week that I went through, and I'd never walked through that and what that is. And so I think it's not something you just put on one little status. It's a process. And so I just want to share because I hope that it encourages and inspires other people that God still is into doing miracles. And I don't know why it's so hard to believe that, but it is for me sometimes. But then witnessing it, it just like encourages your faith. No, I have a friend. Her name is Tana, and a few months ago, I actually got to baptize her. Tana actually had a heroin addiction, and she was just overcoming that. And so we just started meeting for coffee and just really grew closer and stronger. And it was just an amazing bond that we had together. And God just grew that stronger and stronger and through the process. And I just baptizing her at church was a memory that I'll never forget because, you know, ex-heroin addict, ex-meth addict, baptizing ex-heroin addict, that only God can do that. And so just over the, couple years, she has just been someone I would fight for, like someone I would just fight and drop everything I'm doing to go for, to be with. And I don't know what that is. I feel like, we've talked about it. I feel like she's more my sister than just somebody I mentor and stuff like that. But 2 weeks, on September 2nd, she got some news that she was pregnant, almost 9 months pregnant, and the child's father committed suicide. And she got this news. I call her, shock comes in. Over the next couple of days, I go to lunch with her. We just talk, I get to hear about the grandma asking her for a picture of her pregnant and the sonogram, and just this process of grief and anger and hurt and all this that we walked through. Sunday, she ends up coming to second service, and I just sit with her, and it's amazing what I sit through first service, and that message was nothing like it was second service, and it was the same message, because it's amazing what a message means to you when you need it. Like, I was listening to it through the ears of what she needed to hear, texting her the notes, just having her, really know that message was for her about God's love and His faithfulness. And even in this hard time, that He is still faithful. We knew the funeral was coming up, and she already told me, she's like, I don't feel like I should go, because he lived in Arkansas, and I'm like, I support you in that. So Tuesday, she goes to the doctor, and the doctor's going to induce her because the baby's not growing like it should, which is pretty normal. She was 37, 38 weeks, so not a big deal, her being induced. But it was really cool because God was letting her have hope of a baby in the midst of the day of the funeral. So I just thought that was kind of a cool thing just in that process. So she gets induced that night. They start Pitocin at 4 a.m. So I go on with my day on the 10th, whatever day that is. Sorry, my mind's... So the 10th, I go on with my day, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go up there as soon as I get the boys from school and get them settled, and then I'm going to go up there. So I get there about 4 or 4:30. Actually, it was probably 4 o'clock, and she starts... the doctor comes in and says it's time for her to have a baby. And I'm like, perfect timing. But a little while later, Tyler comes in and says that the baby, it was pretty hard labor, and the baby wasn't breathing when she came out, and that the doctors were having to breathe for her. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know if we knew the extent of this at that moment. Like, okay, we're in, they took the baby to the intensive care unit, and so we go in the room. It's like an after baby being born. It's kind of that same feel. Nothing dramatic, nothing. Tyler says, I'm going to go, Granny and her aunt go home. Tyler's like, I'm going to go home and just take a shower and just whatever. I was like, good. Tana's going to rest. I'm going to sit there. So I'm sitting there starting to play worship music, and this doctor loudly comes in, and I'm like, Tana's sleeping. Do you have to come in right now? She goes, I need to speak to the mom. And where's the dad at? So I'm like, when she asked where the dad was, I'm like, I gave her the look, like, don't ask that again. But then Tana's waking up, so I didn't get to explain to her what had happened. So she pulls up a stool and she's like, can I talk in front of this girl? And Tana's like, yes, of course. And I sit there and witness this doctor telling Tana that they did a brain activity scan routine, and that the baby did not have a good report, and that the baby didn't breathe for 4 minutes coming out, and that the baby needs to get to Children's Hospital as soon as possible to get on a ice machine thing to cool down the brain. I don't know what all that means. All I heard was, in my head, is Tana just lost somebody else. And I can't tell you I was this strong person to know, like, oh, sure, let's pray. Oh, God's got this. No. All I could do is cry for her, with her. It was just like a fog. I texted the sister at 6:29 and said, get back up here. I looked back on my text, and of course she said, why? I think we talk. I think we, and at this moment I ended up calling my pastor and my pastor's wife and just telling her, I don't know what to pray. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't think I'm called out for this pastoring stuff, like what do you do in that moment? Like when you're supposed to have all the answers, like what do you do in that moment when you have walked through such a hard week with this girl? And then you hear another bad report from this doctor. What do you do? And, Pastor Onika, she's like, you just have to be there. You just have to be there to cry with her, to love her, to support her in any way she needs it. And I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. At this moment, Tyler gets there. She talks to the doctor. All that, like I said, is a fog. But then I'm calling somebody else. I forgot who that was. I think it was Mara, which is another key person in this whole story, but I'll get to her in a little bit. This black nurse named Kiki comes up to me. She goes, listen, girl. She goes, I am a praying woman, and I am believing that baby's going to be fine, and I'm going upstairs to lay hands on it, and that baby's going to be fine. I'll ask her mama if I can, but I'm a praying woman, and I know that baby's going to be fine. And I'm like, thank you, Lord, for sending your angel at this moment to encourage me that all the weight in that moment, I had no control of it anyway, but God did. God already had Kiki working that wasn't supposed to be working for 3 days, took somebody's random shift that night, and ended up being there at this moment to pray for Elliejane. So Kiki goes upstairs, prays for baby Elliejane, comes back down, and is telling me this story about what happened in that room. And she said, I just started asking God for forgiveness, and I just started praying for healing over this baby. And she said, I just felt the presence of the Lord come in that room so strongly. And she said that the baby ends up grabbing her finger during this prayer, during this time. Can you say a miracle? That's all I can say. That's all I know that was. After Kiki prayed for Elliejane, I think it just helped all of us have the faith we needed that we can get through this. We can, pray for this baby. We can start believing for God's miracle. He sent this angel to give us that glimpse of hope, to know that Elliejane was going to be fine. And bring Elliejane to see Tana before she leaves. They will her in. I'll show a picture right now of that. Here she is laying there still, not moving, looks, I would say she looked dead. Yeah, it was, They open up the side where Tana could see her baby, and Tana touches her, and her legs start moving, and she starts sucking, and she turns her, starts moving her head towards Tana, the second glimpse of hope. what we needed. And still in the back of your mind, you're like, God, I don't want to be too disappointed if this isn't your miracle, or is this you? I mean, is she going to be okay? You know, we still didn't know anything. All we hear is the report of the doctor saying there was no normal signs of a normal newborn. We start headed to the children's with Elliejane. Ends up, Tana's in a small group, and the small group pastor of that group ends up calling me. She's like, I'm going to meet you there. We're sitting there, and the baby's starting to move a lot more. Like, we're like, oh my gosh, is this happening? We end up hearing her cry, so we get to text Tana and Tyler and tell her, you know, Elliejane just cried, which is a huge, I think it's a huge accomplishment. I don't know medically if it was or not, but they get the baby settled. We ended up getting to go in the room and pray and, you know, have worship music playing and just there was this on our right side, this huge thing of fluid. Like, I'd never really seen that before, and I'm assuming that was where the damage was, but it was behind her right ear. And Mara just lays hands on it, and we just start praying. She just starts praying, and I'm just agreeing, because I'm just like, God, you know, you've already showed up so much, and I believe that you can, you know, heal her all the way. But, you know, I was too emotional into it. But Mara, gosh, that girl's prayer, I'm like, dang, she can pray. So we end up, the baby's settled. There's nothing really we can do. We go home like at 1:30 or something, and I come back the next day, and she ends up waking up that night, and a little bit, just like a newborn, can't really focus, not really like a normal newborn yet. But they ended up not doing the procedure that night because they didn't feel like she was bad enough to need it. So that was our first little glimpse of, okay, something's better than it was there. That next day, we're at Children's. Tana gets released. Tyler's there. It's me. It's all three of us in the room. The doctor comes in and says, we did the same test on her as they did at the other hospital. But when we did the test here, it was the complete opposite of what they did there. She goes, I'm not saying they did the test wrong. And we're like, we're not saying nothing was wrong. God just healed that baby. And I look over at her head, that spot's completely gone. Of course, there's just a process from then on out. They have to do an MRI just to make sure. And we were all like, do the MRI. Let's show us how perfect she is. Like, tell us, you know, show us a picture of what God really did to her. And of course, we got it back, and it was perfect. And so Elliejane actually got to go home yesterday, which is a huge, huge thing for us, for her mom and her sister and all that. But I hope that my excitement hasn't dumbed down to the events that happened, because that baby was healed. Like, I can't explain it. I can't tell you why some are, some aren't. But this baby was miraculously healed. And I do believe her mama needed that. And I am just so excited for the call on Tana's life. And I'm so excited for the call on Elliejane's life. And I just hope that this encourages y'all to believe in miracles again, to have faith in God that He can move mountains if you just have faith of a mustard seed. It's crazy. Like, it's for real crazy. So this isn't the end of you hearing about Elliejane.